Hey everybody, welcome back to In Bed with the Millennial. I'm the Millennial Javeda Bay, and this is my bed, and it's still Kinktober. And today I want to talk about actually exploring your kinky side. So this is really geared to folks that are not already a part of the kink and BDSM community, but their interest is piqued, and they're like, where do I begin? This is for you. This is to answer that question. So let's get into it. Okay, Jave, where do I start if I want to explore kink and BDSM? How do I do this? I'm so happy you asked. Firstly, welcome. It's a fun place to be. But if you're kind of nervous and you're like, I don't know how to even start to digest and explore the aspects of me that might be kinky, I'm still a little apprehensive, or like, I don't want to be like shamed or stigmatized by my partner. Those are all very valid feelings, very real. And most folks engaged in kink and BDSM also went through them when we first started. So you are not alone. Let's start there. If you were worried about your partner's reaction to engaging in kink and BDSM, that is also very real and valid. And there is no like perfect way to handle that. The only thing you can do is actually talk to your partner about it. You'll never know how they truly feel unless you have a conversation with them. So if you are wanting to bring this up to your partner so y'all can explore together, starting with a conversation is extremely, extremely, extremely important. But it's also where a lot of people get tripped up because, again, we're not taught how to communicate about sexual things, let alone things that are generally in like the larger narrative stigmatized and like shamed. So how do you have this conversation? Do you know what I'm gonna say? I think you know what I'm gonna say. Use social media. There's so many of us on social media giving you tools and things that you can use as like a starting point for a conversation that doesn't put the work on you to figure out like, how do I begin this? Let me start that conversation for you. Use social media. So if you've seen any of the kinks that I've posted this month on Instagram and you're like, oh my goodness, wait, I'm intrigued. Use that to start a conversation with your partner. Be like, hey, have you ever heard of this before? I saw it on Jave's profile and I'm a little like, I'm just curious. I'd like to learn more, talk about it with you, whatever it is. Use the stuff that is already out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But when you have this conversation, one, please, please, please remember that not everybody's going to respond immediately. Sometimes people need time to process. They need to be able to go look and see what you're talking about. And that's a-okay. Just because your partner doesn't immediately respond with like, oh my goodness, yes, babe, let's do it, does not mean that it's not going to happen for you one day. Sometimes it just takes people a little bit longer to like sort things out and get to a place where like, okay, here's how I'm feeling. So take your time. Know that it's okay if your partner does not immediately run, get some rope and start tying you up. Like, it's okay. Also, that shouldn't be the way it goes because, you know, we got to learn some stuff. But in having this conversation, be prepared for your partner to potentially have questions for you. And this is not saying that you have to be a sex educator and you have to know everything and be able to answer all their questions. But being able to answer some general ones, especially if they're specific to you. So if they're like, okay, but like, what about it interests you? Like, what makes you want to do this? Very common question. Or being like, how do I even learn to do this to you? Also a common question. So being prepared to answer those questions. And if the question is like, how do I learn to do that? It's really good if you come prepared and you already know that like your local sex shop has a class coming up on the thing you're talking about. Or if someone's doing a virtual workshop. So having those in your back pocket. So that way they don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. You already got a resource for them available. But yeah, be prepared to answer questions. Be prepared to also take it slow. If they're like, yeah, let's do it. Remember that everyone's just starting out. We don't need to be out here trying to do every super advanced experience thing that we see in kinky porn. Like, no. Take it slow. Also, making sure that like y'all are fully communicating everything. So like, again, like all the aspects of kink and BDSM, they should be a part of this conversation, but communicating like what you're okay with. So talking about your boundaries and limits, also communicating like aftercare and how y'all are going to handle things afterwards, especially because as as new folks getting into kink and BDSM, the experience can be extremely like overwhelming when you come down from it. So making sure that aftercare is in place, so that way you don't have an experience, no aftercare, and then you're like, I never want to do that again because you didn't get what you needed at the end. So just make sure you include all the different components. Also making sure that we're discussing safety and risk awareness or risk minimization, depending on what the activities are. But having a conversation is the first place to start if you were trying to explore this with your partner. Now, if you were trying to explore kink and BDSM by yourself, baby, welcome. You can absolutely do that. You don't need to have a partner to engage in kink and BDSM. So a lot of the same stuff carries over if you're engaging in kink and BDSM by yourself. One, you got to educate yourself. You can't be out here doing wax play and using candles from the Target $3 section. Like, no, those are not made for that. So educating yourself, getting the correct materials, start there. And in terms of educating yourself, do it in a wide variety of ways. Actually read books. There are so many books on different types of like kinky activities, or books that encompass so many kinky activities. And if you're curious about those, I'm gonna be sharing them this week on social media. But also watching videos about it. So there's a lot of different like YouTube channels that show you how to do rope bondage and things of that nature. So actually watching educational videos, in-person learning, so going to workshops at your local sex shop. All of these are ways to learn, so that way you don't start doing something and then end up having a call for an ambulance because things did not go the way they should have because you did not know what you're doing. So educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself. Especially in terms of like safety precautions, like if you were to tie yourself up, making sure that scissors are readily available. I mean, like so close within reach, like you don't actually have to lean, do nothing. Like they need to be right there. So making sure you're also taking care of safety precautions because you're playing by yourself. So you got to take care of yourself. And also in that same vein, aftercare for yourself. Yes, it's more delightful when a partner is the one cuddling you and bringing you your water, but you can also do aftercare on your own, making sure that like after you're done playing with yourself, you drink your water, you put on your nice fuzzy robe and just like recollect your thoughts and like meditate for a moment. All of that. So all the things that apply when you are playing with someone else still apply when you're playing with yourself. And now if you're like, okay, Javay, I get all that, but like, how do I really like figure out what kinks to explore? Like where it's so much, how do I venture in? Unfortunately, there's not a direct roadmap of like this step, this step, this step, and you'll be like there in terms of like following a order of kinks. So I say go with what really like excites you and has your interest peak. If there's something that you're like, oh, I keep thinking about this thing. I've thought about it for like 3 days in a row, and my mind just like goes to that. That's the first thing that pops in my head when I think about kink and BDSM. That's probably something that you're extremely interested in, and it wouldn't hurt to like start there. But if you're like, Javay, everything sounds really amazing, and I really just like don't know. I do have a few kinks and kink activities that I think are like really good starter ones. Impact play being one of those, especially because you can do it by yourself. But impact play is a really great one because one, you can do it without getting anything else. You got your hands, that's what you use. So starting out with impact play is a really great beginner entry activity. You can also do things like role play if you are trying to do it with a partner. Power dynamics in the sense of like using toys on each other and your partner, like, you know, forced orgasms and things of that nature. It doesn't have to be extreme. Like if you search forced orgasm, like pornography, you might see some extreme stuff. You can also do it in a much milder way, like using app controlled or remote controlled toys and things of that nature. But just a few. But if you're really like, Javay, I don't even know the names of the things that I'm interested in, there is obviously a test that you can take, bdsmtest.org. I love to refer people to check that out, and I also regularly redo it to see like how my interests and desires are changing over time. And so if you do that, it helps you to actually put a name to the things that you're interested in, because the questions aren't like, do you like impact play? They're very particular scenarios of types of things that can happen, and then they tell you what those things actually end up being, when they give you your results of the test. So if you're like, I don't have the language to explore these kinks further, that is a great way to go about it. Also, there are a bunch of like blog articles on the internet. I know Cosmo has one, or maybe it's Glamour, that's like A to Z list of kinks and BDSM activities. And so you could also check that out and then like search further after you like read the definition and you're like, oh, okay, that could be interesting. So lots of different ways to learn about it. But just know that if you were like, okay, I think I want to do this, there's no rush to do it. You can take your time as you're working your way through. If you just want to like get super educated before you actually start to play, do it. I love that. As a schoolgirly, you know I love some education. But it's your own pace. You get to take it at your own speed. And if anyone's trying to push you to go faster, send them my way so I can give them a knuckle sandwich. Also, just recognizing that we do evolve and change over time. If you are getting started in kink and BDSM and you're like, oh my goodness, rope bondage, that's the thing for me. And then in a couple of years, you're like, actually, rope bondage is still like, it's still fun and fulfilling and I do enjoy doing it, but I'm more interested in doing XYZ thing more often. That is also okay. It's normal. It's valid. Like, it's your experience with kink and BDSM. So make it what you want to make it. Don't think that it has to look like everybody else's BDSM experiences. No, because we're not all the same. We don't all like the same things sexually. And that most definitely applies to kink and BDSM. But yeah. If you are about to start exploring, welcome. I hope that you have a grand time. And as always, my inbox is open. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. I'm always happy to answer them. But definitely make sure that you're following me on social media because, again, I share so much extra stuff on my social media platforms. And definitely make sure you subscribe to my email newsletter because in case social media is like, Javay, you've talked about sex one too many times and gives me the boot, you can stay in touch with me. And also bookmark my website, themillennialsexpert.com. And why are you not already subscribed to this YouTube channel? Like, come on, that's rude. But yeah, that's that. I will see y'all next week. Deuces.